Go get a cloth and wipe our table. The mocking voice caught Helen off guard. She flinched and turned toward the sharp tone coming from the table by the window. Seated at a lavishly set table were two distinguished-looking men and a stylishly dressed woman in her 30s, wearing an expensive dress with glittering jewelry. It was this woman who had risen slightly, tilted her head to the side, and was looking straight at Helen with a challenging expression. There was a malicious sparkle of recognition in her eyes. Helen instantly knew who she was. Incredibly, it really was Hope, her former classmate. They hadn't seen each other since high school graduation, but Helen would have recognized that haughty smile anywhere. Now it was mixed with clear, spiteful mockery directed at her. Helen's heart skipped a beat in surprise, but she managed to keep her face calm. Soft music played in the background, the air scented with freshly brewed coffee and gourmet dishes. The gentle glow of crystal chandeliers reflected in the wall mirrors and on the polished marble floor. All around, well-dressed guests dined at elegantly set tables. The restaurant Helen had built from the ground up, and of which she was proud, was enjoying its usual evening rhythm. But now, a small scene in one corner was drawing all the attention. A glamorous guest had just loudly addressed another woman, dressed more modestly, as though she were hired help. That evening, Helen wasn't wearing her usual formal blazer, just a light blouse and a dark skirt. She had been making her rounds, checking on the servers to ensure everything was running smoothly. Then came this sudden blow from the past. "What's the holdup?" Hope drawled, narrowing her eyes. "I believe I made myself clear. Wipe our table. Or should I call the manager to remind you of your duties?" The derisive tone brought color to Helen's cheeks, but she forced herself not to react. "Stay calm, just stay calm," she told herself. Years in the restaurant business had shown her all kinds of customers. She'd dealt with rude ones, arrogant ones. But this was different. This wasn't just a fussy guest, it was someone from her past who knew her far too well in her youth. "My apologies," Helen replied evenly, stepping toward the table. "Did something spill?" "I'll take care of it right away." Hope nodded toward the table, where a few drops of red sauce stained the pristine white tablecloth. "Better hurry, it's uncomfortable sitting here. Or do you people not know how to react quickly?" One of the men at the table, apparently Hope's companion, touched her hand awkwardly and murmured, "Hope, maybe don't." But she ignored him entirely, clearly enjoying the public attention on Helen. Helen noticed the exchange. For a moment, a wave of shame washed over her, in front of the other guests, and in front of her staff, who had surely overheard Hope's words. She couldn't tell if her former classmate was motivated by old resentment, jealousy, or simply a desire to boost her own ego at someone else's expense. But right now, she was clearly reveling in trying to humiliate her. "Don't worry, I'll take care of it," Helen said quietly. She turned to the young waitress, Marina, who stood frozen nearby with a tray in her hands. The girl had seen some lady scolding the restaurant's owner and didn't know how to react. "Marina, could you please bring a clean napkin and take care of this?" Helen asked gently. The waitress quickly nodded and hurried off to fulfill the request. Hope raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Now that's service." Calling in the underlings, she smirked, eyeing Helen critically. "So, how long have you been working here? I don't recall seeing you before." Her voice dripped with feigned curiosity. Helen understood the game now. Hope had recognized her perfectly and was speaking loudly on purpose, wanting everyone around to hear. Look, she'd run into an old acquaintance who'd apparently sunk to cleaning tables. Painful memories jabbed at Helen. High school years, the cruel nickname, the teasing from Hope and her friends. A long-forgotten scene flashed in her mind, a school hallway, 10th grade Hope, tall, confident, in a brand-new imported blouse, standing in front of skinny Helen and mocking her for everyone to hear. "Keep this up and you'll end up mopping floors," she'd sneered, eyeing Helen's worn sweater. Their classmates had laughed or turned away, pretending nothing was happening. Helen had felt tears welling up but held them back. Back then, she'd naively hoped Hope would simply forget about her. How wrong she'd been. "Just wait, I'll show you someday," she thought through her tears. The memory lasted only seconds. Now, in front of her again was Hope's mocking face, older, but just as condescending. How strange and symbolic that, after so many years, Hope was unknowingly repeating those same words about mopping and cleaning, as if no time had passed. But Helen was no longer that timid girl. She had something to say now. Marina returned with a clean napkin and a bowl of warm water. She approached the table, but Helen gently took the napkin from her. "Thank you, Marina, I'll handle it. Please check that table by the window, the guests are nearly done," she said calmly. The waitress nodded hesitantly and stepped away, still glancing back with concern. Helen turned to Hope, who was watching her every move with a triumphant expression. Hope's companions had fallen silent, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. Hope, meanwhile, kept up her jabs, as if transported back to their school days. "Careful. There's hot sauce here," Helen remarked evenly, wiping the pink stains from the white tablecloth with the napkin. She moved with brisk efficiency, like she was handling a routine task. Hope snorted. "Look at that, not even talking back," she said in mock disappointment. "Hard to believe this is the Helen, the star student, the pride of our school. And now look at you. What is it you do here, exactly? Cleaning staff? Waitress?" "Hope, enough already," one of the men said quietly, nervously adjusting his tie. It seemed he was getting tired of the scene. Guests at nearby tables were casting uneasy glances toward them. At that moment, the restaurant's manager, Victor Smith, a distinguished older man, approached the table quickly, probably summoned by a staff member. He bowed politely to the guests and looked at Helen. "Excuse me. Is everything all right? Would you like us to change the tablecloth or bring you a complimentary dish?" Hope lifted her chin in surprise. "The manager? Perfect. Explain to your employee here," she nodded toward Helen, "that she should respond to customers' requests more quickly. We've been waiting." Victor assessed the situation with a practiced eye. Helen gave him a small shake of her head, and he understood. "My apologies if our service has not been prompt enough," he said politely. "We'll take care of it right away." "It's already taken care of," Helen replied shortly. "Thank you, Vic. I'll handle our guests myself." The manager hesitated for a moment, but seeing the firm expression on Helen's face, quietly stepped aside, staying close by. Hope narrowed her eyes, glancing from the manager, who had just called Helen by name, back to Helen herself. For a brief moment, there was confusion in her gaze. Well. Looks like you're quite the big shot here," she said with biting sarcasm. "On a first-name basis with the boss? I bet you've made friends. So what exactly is your position? Head of the mop department?" This time, instead of the usual smug confidence, there was a sharp, almost hysterical edge in her voice. Helen straightened. The whole room seemed to be watching their duel, though most pretended to be busy. The staff held their breath. She felt the moment of truth had come. Looking her former classmate straight in the eye, Helen spoke clearly and loudly, calling her by name. "Hope, thank you for your concern about our establishment. If you have any complaints about our service, I'm happy to hear them, as the restaurant manager." Hope blinked. "Manager," she repeated in disbelief. "That's right," Helen nodded. "More precisely, the director of this restaurant. And to be completely accurate, the owner." Hope's eyes widened as she glanced from Helen to the manager and the servers, who were clearly attentive to every word their boss spoke. Her self-assurance seemed to vanish. You own this place?" she breathed. "That's impossible." "It's not impossible," Helen said with a faint smile. "This restaurant belongs to me." For several seconds, Hope was speechless. Her companions looked just as stunned. The men quickly rose from their seats, obviously wanting to leave the uncomfortable scene. "Hope, maybe we should go," one of them murmured, touching her shoulder. But Hope couldn't take her eyes off Helen, as if her mind still refused to accept the reality. Her cheeks burned crimson, her hands trembled around the thin strap of her clutch. This was the same Helen she used to mock back in school, and again today, not knowing she was the owner of this stylish, upscale restaurant. I didn't know, she stammered at last. God, Helen, this is your restaurant. That's right, Helen confirmed calmly. Her voice carried no reproach, only politeness and composure. It's taken me a long time to get here. It wasn't easy. Hope gave a jerky nod, looking away. She suddenly felt herself shrink inside, as if her very height had diminished. Her two companions stood a few feet away, deliberately studying the paintings on the wall. A heavy tension hung in the air. Hope tried to break it. Well, this is quite the surprise, she mumbled, forcing a smile. You've done well for yourself. Honestly, I'm happy for you. Sorry if I said anything wrong, I didn't mean any harm. You know how I am. Just emotions, that's all. Why don't you join us? We could catch up, it's been years. Helen looked at her and saw the same Hope, not the flustered woman standing before her now, but the one from high school. Back then, she'd reigned over the halls, handing out nicknames, issuing orders. Here, not knowing who she was speaking to, she'd slipped back into that old habit, making jabs, smirking, showing who was in charge. But this time, the tables had turned. Inside, Helen felt no anger, no desire for revenge. Only quiet satisfaction and a weary understanding. Yes, she'd grown, not just in her career, but as a person. Life had put everything in its place. This wasn't a reason to gloat, only a moment to take stock. It's all right, she said softly after a pause. I hold no grudges about the past. Let's say we're even. Hope brightened, latching onto the words like a lifeline. Of course, even, she agreed quickly. Thank you. Really, why don't you sit with us? Let's talk, catch up, it all came out so awkwardly. Helen straightened. There was no arrogance in her expression, only firm courtesy. No, Hope, I won't sit. Hope froze. Helen's smile held no malice, but there was a clear boundary. It's not about grudges, Helen continued gently but firmly. This place has its own standards. People come here who respect one another, the staff, the atmosphere. Your words tonight weren't just insulting to me, they disrespected everyone who works and dines here. Hope opened her mouth, but Helen gave a small shake of her head. I'm sorry, but things like that don't go unnoticed. Tonight's incident will be recorded. Under our policy, rude behavior toward staff or guests means we can't continue to serve you. Now Hope truly paled. Even her companion stiffened. One of the men turned as if to speak, but stopped under Helen's steady gaze. Do you understand? She added quietly. This isn't personal revenge, it's policy. I respect my work and the people who do it. I can't allow anyone here to feel humiliated. Not a guest, not a server. A long silence followed. Helen glanced at her watch and gave a polite nod. You may finish your dinner. A server will assist you for the rest of the evening, but tomorrow your contact information will be added to our general blacklist. She stepped aside to leave, then turned back, her tone still even. Have a good evening. I hope you learn more from this than from anything I could say. Without waiting for a reply, Helen turned and walked deeper into the dining room. Behind her, the music played again. Voices and the clinking of glasses filled the restaurant once more. Life went on, under the rules she had set. Hope stood there for several more seconds, as if searching the air for something to hold on to. She fidgeted with the strap of her clutch, shifting awkwardly from foot to foot. Her cheeks burned, not so much from shame, but from an unfamiliar sense of vulnerability. Collecting herself, she nodded to her companions, murmured something, and walked toward the exit without looking back. The walls that had seemed so welcoming when she entered with her chin held high now felt as though they were closing in on her. Every step weighed heavily in her chest. She couldn't bear to stay, not because anyone was physically forcing her out, but because remaining would mean admitting complete indifference to her own behavior. She understood. This was all her doing. Her words, her tone, her arrogance had created the very situation that now burned inside her. And she had to accept the consequences. Manager Victor Smith was quick to bring her coat. Her companions took her by the arms and gently guided the stunned woman outside. The former classmate left without another word. Helen walked calmly through the dining room, offering her usual smile to a server and a nod to the manager. Everything here was familiar to her, down to the smallest detail. Every feature, every touch in this restaurant was her choice, her effort, her story. Ahead lay more work, more meetings, more responsibilities, but without the weight she'd once carried inside. She stepped into her office and paused by the window. Outside, the evening street buzzed, lights twinkled, people hurried past, and inside her, there was peace. She had swallowed a lot in her time, mockery, humiliation, doubt. But all of that had been her fuel. What she had now wasn't a gift of fate or an accident, but the result of her own determination. Sometimes life gives you the chance not to take revenge, but to show how far you can rise without sinking to someone else's pettiness. And that is the real victory. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to share it with your friends and family. Like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episodes, and drop a comment telling us where you're reading from. It'll be fun to see.